We have probably 30 buildings or more, but they're all small property managers. So if you have a small property manager or a condo board that is tired of the big guys, then they might come to us and ask for that. But it's when we try to go to somebody
Sure.
that we have the hardest times. So we've had three instances that I could think of over the years. One where the building was a condo building and they told us that they had an exclusive marketing agreement with Comcast and so we couldn't put our equipment in there. How do I get customers if I can't do any marketing, right? And that was part of, I think, the comments that WISPA made was, if you can't do marketing, and they're not going to help you, then you're not going to get any customers, and it doesn't make sense to spend the money because it's money that I'm spending to do that. A second building that we're not in told us that they had an exclusive agreement with Comcast, and they only had one provider. They had an exclusive agreement. They can't have any other providers. Mm-hmm. And then the third building that I can think of, they actually told us that it was a new building, and so they had fiber lines in the building, and they're like, well, you can't use the lines because they're Verizon's lines. And I'm like, but once Verizon puts them in and you take over the building, they're not Verizon's lines anymore. Like, if someone doesn't want Verizon, then they're just sitting there and no one's using them, right? And so anybody who comes should be able to use them. So the best situations for us are if it's a new building, when the construction company says yes, and they either run Ethernet for us or they let us come and run Ethernet before the walls are up. Or if it's not a new building, it's telephone lines in there or fiber. We've done some fiber buildings now, and they say yes, and then we can use whatever lines are already in the building. The multi-tenant units are easy, and there's a lot of them. So, and now that we as a company know how to do fiber and there's equipment for fiber, like back in the day it was only DSL equipment, and then fiber started coming around, and then companies started building that equipment to be able to do that in a multi-tenant unit. Now that we know how to do it and we're good at that, we can do all these new buildings that have fiber. Because at the beginning, the new buildings were all fiber, and we're like, oh, we can't do that, right? Now we can. So I could go to any of these buildings and do that and be an alternative provider. I think they should pull the exclusivity of all of this, right? Like, the lines aren't exclusive. Just because you put the lines in doesn't mean no one else can use them. And I think you're doing that. I don't know if they're getting paid, right? I don't know how that works. Do they do it so they can get customers and they just have a deal with the construction company? Does the construction company pay them to do that? I don't know. But once you put the lines in and the building is taken over by a property manager or a condo board, you don't have any rights to those lines. Like, they're not exclusive anymore, right? They're part of the building. So I would like them to drop that exclusivity. I'd like them to drop the marketing thing, because that, again, it hurts small businesses. It doesn't necessarily help the big guys, because people still want to use other carriers. They're not allowed to, right? So it's none of these things are helping one provider in, over and above anything else. It's mostly hurting consumers because they don't have an alternative and they can't get alternative carriers.